Are you tired of forgetting important things like where you left your keys, whether or not you locked the door on your way out, or the name of that person that you've just met? Okay, let's talk about something that I know a lot of us struggle with, and that's remembering things. As humans, we're constantly bombarded with information from all around us. The smartphones we keep checking multiple times in a day, the computers that we use to do productive work, the books that we read for knowledge or entertainment, billboards constantly selling us something, or even the television that we watch to wind down at the end of a long day. It can be overwhelming to try and remember everything, and a lot of the time, important things slip through the cracks. Whether it's important facts, dates, everyday tasks that we need to remember, we all have moments where we forget something, and it can be really frustrating. Well, you're not alone. We've all experienced moments of forgetfulness, and the good news is that there are some simple techniques that we can use to improve our memory. And I'm going to share 3 ways to remember things that have worked for me, which I hope will work for you too. So why do we forget things? Well, our memories aren't perfect and can be affected by so many things, including high levels of stress, lack of sleep, and even certain medication. There are many different reasons, but the 3 that I'd like us to focus on are that we don't pay enough attention to what we're trying to remember, we don't associate it with something that we already know, and we don't practice recalling the information enough. We also need to understand and accept the reality that as we age, our memories naturally begin to decline, which is a natural part of being human, I guess. But there are some practical things that we can do to help improve our memory at any age. First, let's talk about the importance of paying attention. As I mentioned earlier, our brains are constantly bombarded with information from around us, whether we're aware of it or not, and it's easy to get distracted and forget what we're supposed to remember. And if we think about the era of short-form videos such as TikTok and Instagram Reels, many people struggle to even remember up to the 5th video they've just watched, say 5 minutes ago. When we aren't fully focused on the information we're trying to remember, our brains aren't able to process it properly. So what I do, for instance, when I meet someone for the first time and hear their name, 7 times out of 10, I don't just get into 007 mode and say, the name is Vana, Mnemonics Vana, or even rush into the good old, hey, nice to meet you, my name is Mnemonics Vana. I've developed the habit of repeating the person's name back to them just as I've heard them say it, whether I butcher it or not, just to confirm that I got it correctly. And then I spell it out literally out loud in front of them, and depending on the setting, I write it down. Because I'm a visual person with a somewhat photographic memory, this helps me visualize the name in my head or even on the physical piece of paper and write it to memory. Notice how much of a process this is and how much attention goes into it. It sounds weird and with a lot of admin, right? Well, I've developed this habit over years of learning and to some extent understanding myself and others. I have a long first name, Mnemonics, which gets butchered 90% of the time, even by the amazing Siri, whom I've set to South African English, by the way. Hey, what's my name?
You're Mnemonics. That's what you told me anyway.
I don't mind, honestly. It doesn't bother me because I know who I am. But I know how it feels when someone gets it wrong. And I know that a lot of people are not like me, so I make it a point to get someone's full name right as best as I can. What about if I'm meeting 3, 4, or more people at the same time? Do I do this with each person? Well, that's where the remaining 3 out of 10 times comes in. When the spelling of the name is familiar, common, and straightforward, I just focus on repeating the name back to the person. The main point here is to make sure that you eliminate anything else at that moment and focus your attention on the task at hand. One of the best ways to remember something is to associate it with something else that you already know. For instance, if you're trying to remember a name, try to associate it with someone else that you know with a similar name. Or if you're trying to remember a date, try to associate it with something else that happened on that day, like a holiday or a famous event. Now, I know that birthdays falling on a public holiday or famous event can be a touchy subject, so let's stick to the names example. I'd like to believe that each name given to a person at birth has a meaning and is not just a label that distinguishes us from one another. But I can only speak from my personal experience and an African perspective, knowing that African names are identities declared to a child by their parents or family at birth, with the hopes that the child will grow and embody that which their name means. So most, if not all, African names are meaningful identities and in some cases expressions that can be directly translated into one's own language. My first name, for instance, Mandlenkosi, is a descriptive Nguni name which directly translated to English means power of the king. Okay, side note, a little bit of African history. Nguni languages are a group of closely related Bantu languages spoken in southern Africa by the Nguni people. They include isiXhosa, isiZulu, isiNdebele, and Siswati. Amandla means power, Inkosi is a king. So formally, one would say Amandlenkosi, which means the power of the king. But as a name, it's Mandlenkosi. Now that's the direct translation point of view. As a Christian, when we look at the meaning of the name Mandlenkosi, it means power of God. By understanding what a person's name means, you're creating a connection between the new information and something that you already know, which makes it easier to remember. And I'm interested to learn what your name is and what it means, so feel free to share it in the comment section. Another great way to remember things is to use mnemonics, which are memory aids that use patterns of letters, words, or phrases to help you remember things. For example, if you're trying to remember a list of things, you could use the first letter of each word to create an acronym. Or if you're trying to remember a long number, you could break it up into smaller chunks and create a rhythmic pattern of saying those numbers. For example, instead of saying 52036971011, you could probably say 520 36 97 1011. In the music world of reading sheet music, there is a staff, or stave. We'll go with staff. A staff is the foundation of Western musical notation. It consists of a treble clef and a bass clef, each of which are made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces. Individual notes are assigned to each line and space from top to bottom, from the letters A to G. Let's focus on the treble clef for this example. From top to bottom, we have F, D, B, G, and E on the lines, and E, C, A, F in the spaces. Now we can try and memorize that the top line must be F, and then the rest of the notes fall in place chronologically as E, D, C, B, A, G, F, and E at the bottom. But young children are taught a mnemonic phrase to remember the 5 lines of the treble clef from bottom to top. Every good boy deserves fudge, and face in the space. So mnemonics are a great way to make information more memorable and easier to recall. In addition to mnemonics, it can be helpful to use visual aids such as creating mind maps or diagrams to remember complex ideas more effectively. Most of our brains are wired to process visual information more easily. Another tip is to practice recalling the information. Our brains tend to forget things over time, so it's important to review the information on a regular basis to reinforce it in your memory. The more you practice recalling something, the more it sticks to your mind. This can be done through regular practice and repetition, such as flashcards, quizzes, or even asking yourself what you're trying to remember, and then trying to recall it without looking at any notes or reminders. Let's talk a bit about the importance of staying healthy and getting enough sleep. Now, there are so many opinions about the age-old debate of how much sleep is enough sleep to function properly. That's probably a story for another video, but make sure you're getting enough sleep, because sleep is important for memory consolidation, which is the process by which our brains solidify and store new information. Also, try to reduce stress in your life. A little bit of stress every now and then is good, but chronic stress can impair your ability to remember things. So finding ways to relax and de-stress can be very helpful. Our brains need proper nutrition and rest to function at their best. So make sure you're eating a healthy diet and getting enough sleep to support your memory. Also take breaks and get some fresh air. This can be helpful for improving your memory. Studies have shown that exercise and spending time in nature can help increase blood flow to the brain, which can help improve cognitive function. Forgetting things is a normal part of life, but there are some simple techniques that you can use to improve your memory. Paying attention, making associations, using mnemonics, practicing recalling information, staying healthy, and getting enough sleep. By incorporating these habits into your daily routine, you can improve your memory and help ensure that you don't forget the things that are important to you. Also remember that we all have different learning styles, and what works for one person may not necessarily work for another. So don't be afraid to experiment with different techniques and find what works best for you. I hope these tips will help you remember things better and make life a little bit easier for you. If you have any other tips and tricks that have worked for you specifically, please leave them in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.